Hey, I'm Steven with Epoxy Depot. We're going to go through the steps of how to install correct flake system floor. So epoxy base coat, flake broadcast, and then polyaspartic top coat. And I'm going to show you guys kind of step by step how to go through that process and what it looks like to do the floor correctly. This is Brad.
I'm Brad. I'm helping out Epoxy Depot today. I want to show some of the things that we're going to use, some preparation machines and things like that. So first and foremost, we're going to grind the floor, get a nice profile, make everything very adhesive to the chemicals we're going to be using. We have a vacuum or dust extractor that's going to keep the dust down so it's not floating around all over the place. We have our top coat, which is the Lab Fast 85 top coat clear. We're going to use that last once we get the flakes down. We have our gray epoxy that is going to be our base coat that we're going to broadcast all of our flakes into, color flakes here. So that's going to cover the entire floor. We have rollers, notch squeegee, and we're going to get into some of that later. We're going to show some of that, how we apply with this. We have a flat squeegee for our top coat, 18-inch rollers, mixing paddles, trays, sticks. We have edge grinders for all the edge work, so everything is adhering to the edges just as much as it is to the floor. Rack attack, everybody needs one of those for edge work. Nobody likes crawling on concrete. And then as we go throughout, we'll show different things and different procedures. So first things first, we're gonna grind the floor, open up the concrete. If there's any hairline fractures underneath the power chop concrete, we wanna open that up, and then we can start repairing the cracks and stuff like that. Here we have some trapezoid 2-bar, 1620 mediums. That's gonna go on our on-floor machine here with a quick change plate. Very easy to place, has 4 grommets. And you pop it right on as long as you can line it up correctly. You can force that on there and it sits and you're ready to grind. All right guys, so I'm going to show you guys how to clean this vacuum and proper operation. That way you don't have any dust that backflows out and gets all of your customers' garage. Essentially, for operation, we're going to have this door closed and there's a trap door that we're going to keep closed while it's running. If you do not keep that trap door closed, it will blow out the back. To clean the filter, you pull this gate open here and then you turn it to the right. If you're facing the machine, you turn this to the right, it'll shake all that dust and drop it into the bag. So after we get the floor ground, we're gonna go back and do the edge work and things like that, but we wanted to cut the floor first just to see if any hairline fractures came up later. So what we're gonna do to treat this, this crack here is we're gonna take our 4-inch crack chasing blade, we're gonna run a vacuum behind it, open it up just enough so our product can go in there, get a good bond to both sides, and fill it in, make it solid. We're going to go over the edge work here. It's very important because if you do not get the edge work done, the epoxy could actually curl up on you and fail. Some people say it's not that important, but it is one of the keys, so it doesn't get ruined very quickly. So we're going to be using a 7-inch Patabo. It does have a diamond grinding wheel on the bottom here. This is the, I think it's 24 seg. We're going to use that. Also, I highly suggest getting a rack attack. I've crawled around on the concrete for years, had a couple knee surgeries. This is a nice unit where it rolls around, you have a bicycle seat and a cushion, so you can go ahead and grind the edges without ruining your knees. All right, so we're gonna get into a little bit of a crack repair. We're gonna be using Urafil, E4E Urafil. It's a 1-to-1 mix ratio. It is a very fast setting product. Once you mix it inside the container, there's an exothermic reaction which will cause it to kick over very fast. Within 2 to 5 minutes. So I do suggest getting it into your crack and on the floor. We're going to show a little bit of what you're going to be using. You're going to be using some sand, some mixing cups, and a plastic putty knife. Like I said, it's very fast setting, so you only use as much as you need. If you mix too much, you're going to have a nice paperweight that costs you about 50 bucks. With the crack repair, I'm going to have Aaron mix up some for me. But I like to run some sand down the crack first. That kind of gives it a substance to absorb into. I'll take my putty knife and kind of run it down, flatten it out, and even make it a small trough so you get good adhesion on both sides. After he mixes that, I'm going to pour it in there, and if it starts to run down or soak up too much, I'm going to actually pour some more sand, mix it, and make like a paste and fill it in nice and even. I typically suggest using measuring cups. We've been doing this for a while, so we kind of eyeball it, but that's not the best. Like I said, this stuff sets up fast. Now with this stuff, you do have to grind it afterwards. You do not want to just leave it there and then coat over it, no matter how well the repair looks, because it is a urethane. The product could separate over it. It could cause a lot of issues. So I like to grind over it. And you see how I'm kind of mixing it in, making somewhat of a paste, and then troweling it flat. And this is going to make a nice solid surface after you grind, so the epoxy is going to adhere to it and you'll never see this crack again. Unless there is an act of God or something underneath the concrete that's shifting and moving, where that crack may come back eventually, but it's highly unlikely. And that's how fast it kicks. It's already hot. This is a silica sand. You want it to be kiln dried. You do not want play sand. Play sand usually is in a plastic bag. Any sand that's in a plastic bag is pretty much off limits because it has moisture in it and it'll mess with your curing process.
So we have a space here in the front where this is all broken out. So we're just gonna make like a paste here, and we'll show you how we fill that in. Now this will harden up in a couple minutes here, and we'll take a grinder and smooth it out nice and smooth.
All right, so after everything's ground and the cracks and stuff are repaired, the cracking and the pitting, it's a good idea to vacuum the entire surface really very well. I usually do it twice, and afterwards you can acetone wipe it, kind of draw some moisture out and things like that. But after it's vacuumed really well, you're ready to coat. So after everything's vacuumed and repaired, next thing we're going to do is we're actually going to strip our roller. If you look here, even the most lintless rollers will have extra lint on them. So with the roller or the tape, I can pull off even more. So I usually take the tape, wrap it completely over the 18-inch roller, and then pull it off. It helps get some of that extra lint out. So after it's taped, we're just going to pull the tape off, and you'll see all the extra lint that is left over. And this is a lintless roller, but you'll see a lot of fine hairs on there. Here's a really fun part and what you're going to need for application of the epoxy. First and foremost, a good pair of spike shoes. There's actually spikes on the bottom of this so you can walk in the wet epoxy without getting it all over your feet. They kick on, nice and easy, essential for coating. Then we have a 9-inch roller for edge work around certain things like the cabinets, stuff like that. Also, the 4-inch roller. That's going to go around, get underneath all the tight spots. If that doesn't get it, we have our chip brush on a stick. We have this patented, by the way. But that is for all the tight spots. Then you're going to need an 18-inch roller that we already took the lint off of, taped it and stripped it. One of the most important is going to be the notch squeegee. It's an 8-12 mil. It's going to lay the epoxy out at a certain mil thickness so that it goes down evenly and nice even coverage for your flake stick to tap into. So once we get the epoxy ready, we have our two parts A to 1 part B. That's going to be for this epoxy itself. We're going to mix that, like I said, 2 parts A, 1 part B. We're going to apply it with that notch we were talking about earlier. And then we're going to broadcast these color flakes into it. Another key thing is when the person is mixing, please do not talk to him. I know it seems funny, but 2 to 1 can be very difficult for some people. So just leave him alone and let him mix. The squeegee only actually sets the pace for the whole job. If you have a slow man up front, he's going to make everybody else go slow. And the thing about the epoxy is you only have 30 minutes to work with it once it's mixed. And that's on the floor. You never want to leave the epoxy sit in your bucket. So mix it and get it down in 30 minutes. So after you get everything squeegeed, we had somebody backbone to refresh and retack the surface of the epoxy, even everything out. And then we broadcast the flakes into rejection. We'll get it up in the air and let it fall to the floor. But we're doing this at 6 square feet per pound. That's the vinyl color flake. And then we'll go for it. Yeah. Give me like a quarter of that. So next, what we're going to do after everything's cured, we come back the next day with our epoxy system. We're going to bleed flow everything into the corner, reflect those flakes, and we're actually going to use a master blaster for your car guys. But we're going to bleed flow all that stuff into a corner, recollect any loose flake, then we're going to go back over it with a scraper, flatten it out, get it nice and solid and flat. And then we're actually going to take a swing buffer with a 100 grit sanding screen, sand screen the whole area, get it nice and smooth, and put our polyspark top coat on. Next, guys, what we're going to do is we're going to use our Shark Equipment 20-inch swing buffer. We got a 20-inch pad on there, the red pad, and a 100 grit sanding screen. I'm going to sand this entire surface. That'll not make it the most flat it can be, and then we're going to come back with the poly. We'll move on to the next step after that. So I want to explain a little bit about the poly that we're going to be using. We're first going to be coating the pole in the middle there, but I want to go over the lab surface poly. I love their packaging. The part B is in black can, part A is in white. Makes it easier for mixing. I know it seems easy enough, but it can get confusing sometimes. So black is B, white is A. It is a 1-to-1 product. So I'm going to mix up a small batch and we're going to put it on the pole, get some flake on there. You can actually see some of this tech data on the website at Epoxy Depot USA. Like I said, it is a 1-to-1. It is a fast working time. I mean, you have about 20 minutes to work with it, but I try to get it down and get it out before it cures too fast. Okay, so with mixing this, we're gonna mix it at 400 RPM. We wanna mix it for 2 minutes. I usually mix in one container and pour it into another because there may be some unmixed material around the edges. So we wanna do a floor or a mix bucket and then a floor bucket or a transfer bucket. I usually take a piece of tape to the second bucket so I don't get them mixed up and you have soft spots in your top. Okay, so one of our final steps, we're gonna mix our part A and part B. We're gonna mix it in this bucket, we're gonna transfer it over here. Now I wanna go over a little bit on the drill. If you guys have a drill similar to this, it has a 1 and a 2. We do not want it on 2, we want it on 1, that's 400 RPM. You mix it for 2 minutes. Once you have it mixed for 2 minutes, I like to pour it in puddles or bands and squeegee it back and forth and back roll, get some nice even coverage. And I'm going to show you on the floor my back roll technique. I got a 4-hour drive tonight, let's do this.
It's a trip when we're all together.
It's the tattoos on his left arm that don't see him. So guys, what we're going to do is we're going to pour, just like yesterday, we're going to pour a band all the way down the edge of the garage, and we're going to take a clear coat and squeegee it nice and tight and do a back roll. If you want to come down here, I'm going to show you my back roll technique. I'm going to roll the floor, make it nice and even, and then I'm going to come back and one final back roll cross hatch across the floor with the weight of the roller. And that's how I do my back roll technique. Also guys, if you look, I pre-wet my roller with the material, not water. I pre-wet it with the polyspartic on the floor before you start rolling. If you don't, you can get dry spots where it looks really dull and really shiny later on. So we want to make sure that it's nice and pre-soaked. So what I want to show you right now is we have a wet line here. We're going to mix our new batch and pour it into that wet line so we don't have any crossover or thicker or thinner spots. So it stays fresh all the way out. Also with this polyspartic we're using, we're going to get about 120 feet per gallon. I usually estimate at 100 feet per gallon, so I know I have enough if anything else happens.
Alright, so we're going to go over a couple pointers on how to put down a perforated vinyl logo on a floor. Now this floor has already been done. It's already been over a 24-hour window with the top coat on it. So we're going to have an extra step in there to make sure that this logo stays adhered and does not come out. What we've done already is we've taped this logo down, we've marked where we want to go with it, and we are going to remove that, sand it lightly, and wipe it down with a xylene so that we have a fresh bond to this current top coat. Then we will stick it back down and coat over it. I'll show you. So we already marked this out and we showed you it on the floor a minute ago. We removed it and I have actually went through and sanded this. I don't know if you can see or not, but there's definitely a change in the color here. So this is step 1, sand it. So step 1 was the sand we talked about. Step 2 is we're going to clean this up, wipe it down with xylene. Just a little bit of xylene, nothing big. We don't want to soak the floor. We don't want to make a big mess. We want it to evaporate quick. So I just get a little bit on a rag, wipe it down. So we have wiped this down with xylene and we're pretty much clean now. The key here is to not rush this. We're going to wait about 15 minutes and we're going to make sure that all of this xylene evaporates and dries. And then we'll move on to applying the logo. So we've let this flash off and dry for about 15 minutes now. And we're going to realign this now, peel the back off of it, stick it down, make sure we have no bubbles or crinkles or anything in it. And then we'll move on to the next step. So we've started laying this logo out. You can see we're already pulling the back of it off. I've got it kind of set up because it takes a little bit to get it around. One of the key things that you have to remember when doing a logo on a floor like this is that you are not pulling it and stretching it too hard. If you stretch it, you will warp the profile of the logo, and you can't have bubbles in here either. So it's slow, steady, and as you're applying it, you're taking every bubble out little by little and just lightly rolling it in as you go across with the logo. Key thing, make sure you're always pulling it lightly and not stretching it. All right, so we've applied our logo. We've made sure that we don't have any big bumps or anything that looks abnormal. Everything's applied good. And we've mixed up our polyaspartic. We're going to do a dip and roll only for the top of this logo. We don't want to pull anything hard across it. We don't want to mess up the ink on the logo. And what we're going to do is we're going to apply the poly about an inch past the logo. We're not going to get out very far on the floor. We're just trying to seal those outer edges and get past the logo by about an inch. That's where I like to be. So take a look. So we went ahead and we applied the polyaspartic to this. We've done I did a dip and roll system, but I did a heavy dip and roll system. I didn't just lightly roll it. The key is to make sure that we've got enough product to go through all of the perforations into the floor below so that we have a complete bond, where basically we made a sandwich. You can see that we've put quite a heavy layer there. We've got a lot of gloss to it. And we're about 1.5 inches or so around the edge, and we cross-hatched it. We rolled it both directions so that we forced product both ways in all the holes.